No one knew who she was. The silent woman at the desert shooting range, making impossible shots in the shimmering heat. When they slapped cuffs on her, they had no idea they weren't just arresting a suspect, they were jeopardizing a nation's security. The Nevada sun was a hammer, beating down on the cracked earth and shimmering asphalt of Highway 50. 30 miles east of Fallon, where the Navy's Top Gun pilots tore holes in the sky, Jedediah Jed Stone ran a shooting range that catered to the serious, the patient, and the few who understood that the desert's emptiness was an illusion. For 20 years as a Navy aviation mechanic, Jed had learned to spot trouble in a rattling engine or a loose rivet. Now, in his retirement, he spotted it in people. And the woman at the end of Lane 7 was trouble. She'd arrived an hour ago in a dust-colored, nondescript sedan, moving with an economy of motion that was almost unnerving. In her early 40s, with a face weathered not by age but by sun and wind, she wore simple cargo pants and a faded t-shirt that revealed nothing of her physique. She'd paid in cash, her eyes, the color of a stormy sea, briefly meeting his before she hauled a heavy-duty Pelican case to the farthest lane. Jed watched from the cool darkness of his office as she assembled her rifle. It wasn't a standard civilian firearm. The chassis looked like a modified Mk-13 Mod 7, the kind he'd seen SEALs carry when they passed through NAS Fallon, but hers was different. It was fitted with a strange, cylindrical scope and a small device near the muzzle he couldn't identify. Her first shots were unremarkable, tight groupings at 200 yards. Then she started pushing it. 500 yards. 800, 1,000. She wasn't just hitting the steel target, she was hitting the 4-inch bullseye, again and again. The shimmering heat waves, the mirage that made the air itself seem to boil, should have made such precision impossible. She wasn't using a wind meter or a ballistic calculator. She would pause, her head tilted slightly as if listening to the desert itself, then her breath would steady, her finger would squeeze, and a distant ping would echo back a second later. A nervous-looking tourist in a brand-new Cabela's vest approached Jed's booth. "Hey, the lady at the end, is she, like, a professional?" "Something like that," Jed grunted, his eyes never leaving her. "It's just, that rifle ain't legal for hunting here, and she doesn't have a range tag. You see that shot? That's not normal." Jed knew. What the tourist saw as unnerving, Jed saw as a masterclass. He saw the controlled breathing, the perfect posture, the way she became one with the weapon. He also saw a professional deliberately operating in a civilian space, and that was a problem. He had rules. More importantly, he had a business to protect in a county where the sheriff's department was perpetually on edge about the proximity of the naval base. He picked up the phone. 20 minutes later, a Churchill County Sheriff's cruiser crunched up the gravel driveway. Detective Ben Carter stepped out, young, ambitious, and by the book. He adjusted his sunglasses and strode toward Jed's office, his hand resting casually near his holstered Glock. "Jed. Got a call about a shooter with an unregistered-looking weapon and no ID." "That'd be her," Jed said, nodding toward Lane 7. "Lane 7. And Carter, be polite. I've got a feeling she's not your average weekend warrior." Carter smirked. "They never are." He approached the woman cautiously. "Ma'am, I need to see your identification and the permit for this firearm." The woman finished her sequence, carefully placing the rifle on its stand before turning. Her face was a blank canvas. "Is there a problem, detective?" "ID and permit, please," Carter repeated, his voice firm. "I don't have those with me," she stated, not as an apology, but as a fact. Carter's demeanor hardened. A search of her case and vehicle produced nothing. No wallet, no phone, no registration. Just a car key, a small, waterproof notebook filled with what looked like complex meteorological data and coordinates, and a single, unmarked key card. "Ma'am, you're in possession of a military-grade weapon without a permit and refusing to identify yourself. You're going to have to come with me." She didn't resist or argue. She simply nodded once, her gaze drifting past him, sweeping across the distant mountain ridges and the empty sky, her eyes calculating angles and distances only she could see. As Carter snapped the handcuffs onto her wrists, he felt a strange chill despite the blistering heat. It wasn't the feeling of arresting a criminal. It was the feeling of disturbing something that should have been left alone. The Churchill County Sheriff's Office was a modern, air-conditioned box of concrete and glass, a stark contrast to the sprawling desert outside. In Interrogation Room B, the silence was as thick as the heat. For an hour, Detective Ben Carter had tried everything in his playbook. He'd been the friendly, understanding cop. He'd been the stern, no-nonsense lawman. He'd laid out the litany of charges she was facing: felony weapons possession, obstruction of justice, and now, potentially, charges under the Patriot Act, given her proximity to NAS Fallon. His Jane Doe simply sat there, hands cuffed to the table, her posture perfect. She listened respectfully, her stormy eyes meeting his without fear or defiance. It was her unnerving calm that was getting under his skin. He'd processed hundreds of suspects. The guilty were arrogant or jumpy. The innocent were terrified or indignant. This woman was patient. It felt as if she were the one in control, simply waiting for him to finish his procedure. "Look," Carter said, leaning forward, trying a different tack. "We have nothing on you. Your prints aren't in any local, state, or even national criminal database. It's like you don't exist. That's a huge red flag for the feds. Help me help you. Give me a name. Just a name." She blinked slowly. "I cannot do that, Detective." Her voice was low and steady, her first words in over an hour. Frustrated, he left her in the room and went to the observation area, where the sheriff, a portly man named Daniels, was watching the monitor. "Anything?" Daniels asked. "It's like talking to a statue." "A statue that could probably kill you with a paperclip," Carter muttered, rubbing his temples. "There's a discipline to her, a deep-seated training. She's not a common criminal. This is something else." Later, when a rookie deputy brought her a cup of water, he noticed a small, jagged scar on her forearm as her sleeve rode up. It was old, white against her tanned skin. "Nasty scar," the rookie commented, trying to make conversation. "Shark bite?" The woman glanced at it, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "Boating accident," she replied smoothly, the lie effortless. The mark wasn't from a boat, it was the kind of gash left by the torn metal of a ship's hull during a hostile boarding, a VBSS operation gone sideways. Left alone in her holding cell, the subtle changes began. She wasn't resting. Her eyes methodically mapped the room, noting the position of the surveillance camera, identifying its blind spots. She timed the guards' rotations by the faint squeak of their shoes in the hallway. Through the small, barred window, she studied the building's layout, marking the location of the emergency generator and the sally port. She wasn't a prisoner, she was an operator assessing a new environment. Carter watched her on the monitor, a growing sense of dread mixing with his professional curiosity. He'd run her description by a contact at the naval base, describing her and the weapon. The response had been a terse and immediate wall of silence. "We have no information on that, Detective." "Drop it." That wasn't a denial. It was a warning. He re-entered the holding cell area. "We've scheduled your arraignment for tomorrow morning. A public defender will be here shortly. This is your last chance to cooperate before this gets handed over to people who are a lot less friendly than I am." She met his gaze, and for the first time, he saw a sliver of something behind the mask, not fear, but a weary resolve. "You are a thorough officer, Detective Carter. You're doing your job, and you're doing it well." The unexpected compliment threw him off more than any threat could have. Before he could respond, she leaned back against the concrete wall, closed her eyes, and appeared to fall into a state of perfect stillness, a ghost in the machine, waiting for a storm only she knew was coming. The public defender was a harried man named Peterson, drowning in a sea of DUIs and petty thefts. He spent 20 minutes with Jane Doe and emerged from the conference room looking even more defeated than when he went in. "She won't say a word," he sighed, throwing his hands up as he spoke to Carter. "Nothing. I can't build a defense for a ghost. The judge is going to throw the book at her. They're talking about moving her to a federal facility. Rumors are flying, espionage, terrorism, this is way above my pay grade." By morning, the small county courthouse was buzzing. It wasn't just the local curiosity seekers. Carter spotted them immediately, two men in dark, ill-fitting suits trying to look casual near the entrance, and a woman in a severe pantsuit talking intently into her phone by the clerk's office. Feds. As deputies escorted the woman, now clad in an orange jumpsuit, from the holding cell to the transport van, Carter noticed her brief, almost imperceptible glance towards the south, in the direction of the naval base. The smallest change crossed her expression, not worry, but confirmation, as if a clock had just struck a significant hour. The courtroom was a modern, soulless space of cheap wood veneer and fluorescent lighting. It was packed. The men in suits were there, now strategically positioned. Carter took a seat in the front row, his eyes fixed on the defendant's table. Even in handcuffs and a jumpsuit, she carried herself with an unshakable dignity that made everyone else in the room seem sloppy. Judge Albright, a stern woman with a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency, banged her gavel. "Let's get this circus started. The state versus Jane Doe. What's the status?" Peterson, the public defender, stood shakily. "Your Honor, we request a continuance. My client has been uncooperative. I have not been able to prepare any kind of adequate defense." Before the judge could respond, one of the suited men stood up. "Your Honor, Special Agent Thompson, FBI. We have reason to believe this case is related to an ongoing domestic terrorism investigation. We request the prisoner be transferred to federal custody immediately." "Objection," the woman in the pantsuit shot back, striding forward. "Special Agent Reyes, Department of Homeland Security. This facility," she gestured vaguely towards the naval base, "falls under our protective purview. Any potential threat is a DHS matter." Carter felt a surge of frustration. This was his case, his arrest. He stood up. "Your Honor, with all due respect to our federal partners, this woman was arrested by the Churchill County Sheriff's Office under state law. We will proceed with the arraignment as scheduled." Judge Albright's eyes narrowed, scanning the competing agents and then Carter. She looked like a woman who hated having her authority challenged. "Detective Carter is correct. This is my courtroom. We will handle the arraignment first. Then I will hear your jurisdictional squabbles. Sit down, all of you." The clerk read the charges in a monotone voice: possession of an unregistered military-grade firearm, obstruction of justice, refusal to identify, pending investigation for activities related to domestic terrorism. The list went on. Through it all, the woman, Eva, remained impassive, her back ramrod straight, her gaze fixed on the state flag hanging behind the judge's bench. She looked less like a defendant and more like a soldier at attention. Carter studied her, the pieces clicking together in his mind: the discipline, the weapon, the silence, the feds fighting over her like wolves over a prize. This wasn't about a crime she had committed. This was about who she was. "How does the defendant plead?" Judge Albright asked, her voice sharp with impatience. Peterson opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Because at that exact moment, the heavy double doors at the back of the courtroom swung open with a resounding bang that silenced the entire room. Every head in the courtroom swiveled in unison. Framed in the doorway stood a figure of immense authority. He was a man in his late 50s, his presence radiating a power that had nothing to do with the law and everything to do with command. He wore the immaculate dress white uniform of a United States Navy Admiral, his jacket adorned with a breathtaking array of ribbons, the 4 silver stars on his shoulder boards gleaming under the cheap fluorescent lights. Flanking him were 2 imposing figures in the uniform of the Navy Master-at-Arms. The gallery fell into a stunned silence. The low hum of gossip and whispers vanished, replaced by a thick, palpable tension. Without a word, the Admiral began to walk down the center aisle, his polished black shoes making no sound on the linoleum floor. As he passed, a transformation swept through the room. Jed, sitting in the back, shot to his feet, his back rigid, his posture a muscle memory from 20 years of service. Two of the court bailiffs, both Marine Corps veterans, unconsciously straightened, their shoulders squaring. Even Special Agent Thompson of the FBI, a former Army officer, found himself subtly adjusting his tie and standing a little taller. They weren't just standing for a man, they were standing for the weight of what he represented. The Admiral didn't look at any of them. His gaze was fixed, first on Judge Albright, then on the woman in the orange jumpsuit. He stopped before the bar and handed a sealed, blue folder to one of his aides, who promptly delivered it to the bailiff. The bailiff, moving with a new, formal deference, carried it to the bench. Judge Albright took the folder, her expression a mixture of annoyance and bewilderment. She broke the wax seal, the small crackling sound echoing in the silent room. As she began to read the single document inside, her face became a study in shifting emotion. Annoyance melted into surprise. Surprise morphed into disbelief. And finally, disbelief settled into a grave, profound understanding. Her eyes darted from the paper to the woman at the defendant's table and back again. The color drained from her face. After a long, breathless moment, she looked up, her gaze sweeping over the courtroom before landing on the defendant. She cleared her throat. In light of new information presented to this court by the Department of Defense, she announced, her voice now devoid of its earlier impatience, replaced with a formal gravity Carter had never heard from her before, all charges against the defendant, Jane Doe, are hereby dismissed with extreme prejudice. This case and all materials pertaining to it are now classified under National Security Directive 72. This hearing is over. She banged her gavel with a sharp finality. Court is adjourned. The room erupted into a cacophony of confused murmurs and shouted questions. The federal agents looked utterly bewildered. Reporters scrambled for their phones. Through the chaos, the Admiral moved with purpose, approaching the defendant's table. A bailiff, moving with uncharacteristic haste, rushed to unlock the woman's handcuffs. For the first time, she spoke in a clear voice that carried across the room despite its softness. "Sir, I apologize for the operational delay and any inconvenience." The Admiral's response silenced everyone within earshot. "On the contrary, Commander. The Navy apologizes to you." At the word, Commander, every person with military experience in the room snapped to perfect, reflexive attention. Commander. Not a suspect. An officer. A leader. Detective Carter watched in stunned amazement as the woman's entire being seemed to transform. The quiet, invisible prisoner was gone. She stood tall, her shoulders squared, her chin up. The deliberate, practiced anonymity fell away like a cloak, revealing the unmistakable bearing of a career special operator. Without the orange jumpsuit and chains, she commanded the room as powerfully as the Admiral beside her. Even Judge Albright, now off the bench, stood and gave a respectful nod to both the Admiral and the woman. "Thank you for your understanding, Your Honor," the Admiral said. "Commander Rostova has been operating under classified orders. The situation required absolute discretion." Outside the courthouse, a swarm of local reporters shouted questions, their cameras flashing. A perimeter of stern-faced naval security personnel kept them at a distance. Commander Eva Rostova, now changed into the simple civilian clothes she was arrested in, stood beside Admiral Vance near a black, government-issue SUV. Sheriff Daniels and Detective Carter approached them, their faces a mixture of confusion and grudging respect. "Admiral," the sheriff began, "with all due respect, my department has been treating this as a potential terror threat for 2 days. We deserve some kind of explanation." Admiral Vance gave a curt nod. "Sheriff, I understand your position. Commander Rostova is one of the Navy's most decorated special operators. The specific details of her assignment are, and will remain, classified. But I can assure you, she poses no threat to your community. Quite the opposite. She was here to prevent one. He gestured vaguely toward the naval base. She was the tip of the spear in Operation Sidewinder. Carter's eyes widened. Operation Sidewinder was a phantom, a whisper among local law enforcement about a recently thwarted, high-level espionage plot targeting the base's advanced drone and electronic warfare tech. The official story was an anonymous tip had led to a low-level bust. I owe you an apology, Commander, Carter stammered, stepping forward. Eva met his gaze directly. The blank mask was gone, replaced by a calm, appraising intelligence. No apology necessary, Detective. You were acting on the information you had. Your professionalism was, in fact, a crucial part of my cover's integrity. You were thorough. An hour later, Eva Rostova was back at the desert shooting range. The sun was beginning to dip, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Jed was cleaning his counter when her dust-colored sedan pulled up. She stepped out, moving with the same fluid efficiency, but now, without the need to hide, it looked less like caution and more like pure capability. "Came for my equipment," she said simply. Jed nodded, disappearing into the back. Sheriff's Department had a special courier drop it off this afternoon. He placed the heavy Pelican case on the counter. As she checked the contents, Jed cleared his throat. 20 years in the Navy myself. Aviation side. Nothing as fancy as what you must do. But I knew there was something about you. Figured you weren't one of ours, though. Didn't seem right. Sometimes the mission requires us to operate where we don't seem to belong, she said, her hands moving with practiced ease as she reassembled the rifle. After they took you in, Jed said quietly, I made a call. Old buddy of mine, works as a civilian contractor over at NAS Fallon. Just told him a woman who shoots like a ghost just got picked up. Figured it was better than doing nothing. Eva paused, then gave him a nod of genuine gratitude. Thank you, Jed. That call probably cut my processing time in half. She walked out to her old lane, the rifle held at a low ready. Without using the scope, she raised the weapon, took aim at a steel plate 800 yards away, and fired. The sound was a dull thump. A second later, the ping of the impact returned. A perfect shot in the fading light. She packed the rifle away carefully. I appreciate your discretion, she said. As she turned to leave, Jed asked, will you be back? Eva looked out at the vast, darkening desert. Some of us are always around, Jed, she said, her voice quiet. You just don't see us. As her taillights disappeared down the long, empty highway, Jed stood in the doorway of his small office and rendered a slow, perfect salute. 6 months later, Ben Carter stood on the observation deck of a building at Naval Station Norfolk, the Virginia humidity a world away from the dry Nevada heat. After 13 years with the Churchill County Sheriff's Office, he had accepted a position as a civilian analyst with the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, NCIS. His first assignment, acting as a liaison between local law enforcement and Naval Special Operations units on domestic soil. The experience with Commander Rostova had changed him. It had opened his eyes to a world of shadows and silent professionals operating just beneath the surface of everyday life. His in-depth report on the incident, highlighting the procedural friction and the need for better deconfliction protocols, had earned him notice in places he didn't know were watching. His phone buzzed. It was a text from an unlisted, encrypted number. Welcome to the watch. Carter smiled. He didn't need to ask who it was from. He knew he would likely never see Commander Rostova again. People like her were ghosts, their successes marked by the crises that didn't happen, their sacrifices known only to a select few. But now, he was part of the system that supported them. He would be the bridge, ensuring the next time an operator had to go deep, the local cops wouldn't be an obstacle, but an unwitting asset. Thousands of miles away, Jed Stone closed up his range for the night. Business had been good. A few months ago, a discreetly delivered package had arrived for him. Inside was a state-of-the-art spotting scope with thermal and night vision capabilities, along with an encrypted satellite phone. The note attached contained only 3 words in familiar handwriting: "Keep watching, Jed." He had become a waypoint. An unofficial talent spotter on the fringe of the civilian world. Today, he'd seen one. A young man, early 20s, who rented a standard .308 but handled it with the expertise of a seasoned Marine Scout sniper. His cover story about being on his college rifle team was plausible, but his wind calls were too intuitive, his muzzle discipline too absolute. Jed sat in his office, the new satellite phone in his hand. He dialed the only number stored in its memory. A neutral, digitized voice answered. "Go ahead." "This is Waypoint 7, Jed said, using the designation he'd been given. "I've got a potential candidate. Male, early 20s. Shows indicators of advanced training. Cover story is thin but holding. He's got the gift." There was a pause. "Noted. Maintain observation. We'll take it from here." The line went dead. Jed leaned back in his chair, looking out at the endless expanse of the desert sky, filled with more stars than most people ever get to see. He thought about Eva Rostova, a woman he had met for only a few hours but who had fundamentally altered the course of his quiet retirement. He was part of her world now, in his own small way. A gatekeeper. A guardian of a different sort. Heroes aren't always in the spotlight. More often, they are the silent, unseen guardians operating in the shadows, their stories never told. They are the ones who ensure we can sleep safely at night, their only reward the knowledge that the watch continues. Who is an unsung hero you know in your own life? Share their story in the comments below, and please, always comment with respect. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to uncover more untold stories of the heroes who walk among us.